Okay, I'm going to start this morning by just officially welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. This is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha in our class. I'll explain to you guys all about what that is later. We start our class with meditation, so I'll guide you guys in a breathing mindfulness meditation practice, and then afterwards we'll move into what's called the Pali Canon and English study group, where we study the original words of the Buddha, but I'll explain to you what that's all about once we get to it. So if you'd like to join for meditation, whether you're here at the temple or you're online joining us, welcome to everyone. And the way that we start our meditation is with some chanting. So if you'd like to ease into the meditation with some chanting, we have some chanting over on the table over there. There's some chanting sheets where it has the chants that I will be doing. These chants are in the Pali language. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or a prayer or anything like that. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation so you get more benefit out of the meditation. So you're welcome to get one of those sheets at any point if you like. And for those of you guys that are online, if you'd like to see these chants, you can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com. And from there, you can click on the free books. There's a link there. And towards the bottom, you'll see the sheet for the chanting. If you look at these chants, there's a lot of appreciation and gratitude and respect for the Buddha. And I suspect his students created these either during his life or after his death, because the Buddha doesn't go around and teach other people to chant things to him. Instead, what they were doing during his lifetime with chanting is they were using it as a way to commit the teachings to memory, so that every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, because everything that he taught was oral. There was no books or anything like that during his lifetime that they hadn't written his teachings down. The technology to write things down was in China, but it hadn't made its way to that part of the world yet. So they didn't actually write things down until after his death. But every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word. So these chants, they originate out of that. And we chant them today as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself, because we don't need to use it in order to remember the teachings, because we have books and videos and podcasts and audiobooks and things like this to capture the teachings. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to do that as I ease into meditation. After the chanting, I'll provide you some guidance during the meditation, that as we're meditating, you'll be hearing me guide you during the meditation. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. We'll just all be meditating here at the temple, and those of you online, we'll just all be meditating together. And I'm sure you'll hear the occasional sound here or there, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible. So if you hear a dog bark or a bird chirping or a car going by, these things are all impermanent, and you can just train your mind to keep coming back to the breath and not be annoyed by this impermanence that is occurring around you. So after we go through that period of time where we're all meditating together, we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting. And then that's where I'll share with you the Pali Canon and English study group and how we do that and move forward with that. So again, if you would like to join in the chanting, you're welcome to do that. In terms of the body positioning, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught to meditate in. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. And it's very common for people to be learning in the seated position, and I see all of you guys are sitting, but you're welcome to use these other methods as well. And I teach these in various courses and retreats that I share, but I'll just give you a little bit of guidance on the seated position, since most people are learning in that and start with that. Is that if you're on the floor, you might have a cushion or so under your rear. This helps to just soften the seat. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which gets the hips up in the air, because you're just interested in lightly crossing your legs, whereas if they were real tight, it would impede the circulation. So some people like to put their legs off the mat because it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And then the hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if you find this to be comfortable, you could use that, but this isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because everybody's body is a bit different. You're going to need to find what's comfortable for you. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees or their palms up. Some people even just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. And then same thing with those of you guys that are in a chair or on a sofa or a bench or in a wheelchair, wherever you're at. If you're in the seated position, just have your lower body comfortable and your hands and arms relaxed and comfortable as well. Whatever's comfortable for you will work just fine. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will help the mind be attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train it. And it also helps you with your breath as well, so you can fully expand the lungs and breathe nice and easy through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease into meditation with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join along, and then afterwards I'll come back with some guidance in the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาพุทธังมะกะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนะมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ All right, if you'd like to slowly ease your way out of meditation, I know you guys don't usually hear me do this, but I'm just going to give you a clap because I hear the chanting sounding really good. So good job, guys. I'm hearing it come through. This is excellent. So once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online. Welcome to all of you that joined us since we started meditating. This is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha. But before we get into that, I'd like to just share a few things for those of you guys that are here for the first time. Just to let you know, there's a bathroom in the very last door on the right in the back of the room. You're welcome to use that at any time. Feel free to use that as you like. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you go outside to the parking lot, there's signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathroom. You're welcome to use that at any point. There's a larger bathroom out there. And then we have water and snacks and things like this that students bring here. You're welcome to help yourself to any of those kinds of things as well. Just make yourself comfortable as you're here in our space. So the teachings of the Buddha, they're all about helping you to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is it's a mental state that you attain during this life or at death. And in this mental state, your mind will be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. That all the anger and sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, resentment, jealousy, all of these feelings in others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it. So meditation is one of the things that we use in order to produce this enlightened mental state, but there's other things that you need as well. In moving the mind to this enlightened mental state, not only have you eliminated discontentedness from the mind, where the mind's peaceful and joyful permanently for the rest of your life, but also you'll experience focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. The mind will be performing optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will blossom and really improve because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships anymore. So all your relationships are at ease. And you'll even notice that you're not in a bad mood anymore, that the causes and conditions that are producing these things to occur have been uprooted. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, you might think other people are causing you to be angry. You might think your mom or your dad or your coworkers or your boss or your life partner or your children are annoying you or frustrating you or agitating you. But you learn through the teachings of the Buddha, and you can independently verify for yourself that your mind is causing these feelings itself. And because your mind is causing these feelings, you can actually eliminate them. Whereas if it was everyone else who was causing these feelings, you wouldn't be able to ever eliminate your anger and your sadness or frustration and all these other discontent feelings. But when you study the original teachings of the Buddha, you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. He didn't teach a bunch of beliefs, and if you believe a bunch of things and something wonderful will happen in the afterlife, that's not what he actually taught. And he didn't teach rules and commandments and try to force you or fear you or guilt you or shame you into doing any particular thing. His mind was already peaceful, it was already joyful. He experienced enlightenment, and he was explaining to you what it took for him to actually acquire that mental state, because he figured it out by himself. That's one of the things that a Buddha does, is they figure out how to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. So as part of your journey to enlightenment, if you decide that you're interested in getting rid of these discontent feelings, you're going to need to learn certain teachings. So you intellectually learn these teachings. You start to investigate them and examine them. Then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you start practicing the teachings, integrating them into your life on a day-to-day basis, so that now in your day-to-day life, you can be practicing the teachings and see the results for yourself. What you're doing when we talk about awakening to enlightenment is you're acquiring wisdom. That in the unenlightened state, because of the mind's lack of wisdom, it will stay stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings over and over and over again. But when you arise wisdom in the mind and you understand true reality, that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself and all the other things that the Buddha teaches you with the various tools and techniques, then when you apply that in your life, you'll see that your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful. Because in situations where your mind is angry or sad or frustrated, and when you're practicing these teachings and training your mind and you're experiencing those same exact situations and your mind is no longer experiencing those discontent feelings, you'll know it's these teachings that are leading you to that improved state of mind. So you can opt out of experiencing these discontent feelings. Sometimes we think that as a human being, we're required to be sad or guilty or shameful or feel stress or anxiety. We've just, in some cases, just adopted the view of, okay, that's just the way it is. But if you're not interested in that, if you're done with the sadness and anger and the arguments and the hostility and the bitterness and the broken relationships and all these other things that plague you in the unenlightened state, you can eliminate this. You can get to a point where your life is completely at ease, completely peaceful, completely joyful. Everything in your life is going wonderfully. Right now, that might not be the case. And that's why people come to the temple to learn and grow and develop and use books and audiobooks and videos and podcasts and personal guidance with teachers and courses and retreats to be able to learn the wisdom that it takes to awaken to the enlightened mental state. You're essentially learning about the natural laws of existence. The Buddha taught these natural laws, and what he taught 2,500 years ago, it's the same natural laws that exist today. So the natural laws haven't changed. So that's why his teachings are timeless. They applied 2,500 years ago, and they apply today as well. When you learn these wisdom of the natural laws of existence and you apply it in your life, your mind can now navigate the world more readily. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you will struggle. You'll have difficulties. If you don't understand the natural laws, you'll have struggles and difficulties. And part of that struggle is the sadness and the anger and all these other discontent feelings. Just like when we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, we struggled and we had difficulties in the world. As a child, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. And that's why we fell down. We hurt ourselves. We broke toys. We had all kinds of difficulties with this natural law. But slowly but surely, we arose wisdom. about this natural law. And then we started navigating the world more readily because we understood this natural law, and we started making wiser decisions that produced wholesome results. But as long as we lacked wisdom of this natural law, we made unwise decisions that produced unwholesome results. But now, because you're fully awake to the natural law of gravity, you fully understand it, you can climb ladders, you can ride bicycles, you can get on motorbikes, you can get on airplanes. That life has become much easier for you because you awoke to the wisdom of a natural law. So there's these other natural laws that your mind is currently unawakened to, that it's struggling. Just like when you were struggling as a child with the natural law of gravity, you're struggling with these same natural laws because these natural laws affect you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, it affects us whether we're aware of it or not. So what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're not believing things. You're not following rules or commandments. You're understanding the human mind. You're understanding the world around you. And now with that wisdom, through learning, through reflecting, independently verifying, and practicing, you're then able to navigate the world more readily. So in this Pali Canon and English study group, what we do is we study the original words of the Buddha in more of a study group fashion. I have other programs and courses and retreats where I teach in a more traditional method, where I gradually walk you through developing a foundation in the path to enlightenment and all the other things that you would need, like how to develop harmony in your relationships, understanding the stages of enlightenment, and all these different things that you're going to need to know, because there are certain pollutions in the mind that the Buddha helps you to understand what they are and how to eliminate them and how to eradicate them. And I teach you that in the various courses and retreats. And usually students will have a certain amount of foundation as they move into this particular program, because in those other programs, for example, on Sunday and Wednesday, I go through this first book. This is called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's volume 1 of the book series. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter by chapter. And this Sunday, tomorrow, we're in chapter 13. And you can join that program at any point. It's a 7-month program that each Sunday we go chapter by chapter by chapter. And a combination of reading the book and coming to class, you build a really nice foundation in a nice, gradual, slow way. And you can do that here at the temple, and you can do it online because I live stream at 9 a.m. Thai time and 9 p.m. Thai time as well. I do it from home in the evening. So that's on Sunday and Wednesday. And you gradually work through that program, and you gradually work through the resources. And this book is available online from our website for free. You can download it. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here at the temple, or you can order it on Amazon. And here you're just reimbursing us for the printing costs, is essentially what you're doing when you're getting a book here at the temple. And the ones online, they're available through Amazon. So usually students will start in either the group learning program or the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, or some of the other courses and programs that we have. And then ultimately a student might decide to come to the Pali Canon and English study group, where we study volumes 2 through 13 of this book series. This book series has 13 books in it. And today is actually the very last class of the Pali Canon and English study group in terms of this iteration of it, because it's a 1.5-year program where we gradually walk through all 13 volumes of the books. From volume 2 through 13. And today we're in volume 13, chapters 81 through 89. These are the last set of chapters in the entire book series. And what we do in this particular program over a course of a year and a half is we go through each volume 10 chapters at a time. And it sounds like 10 chapters is a lot, but some of these chapters are like a paragraph. You'll see when we study. And what I do is I have students download the books, or they end up deciding to get a printed version in one way or another, and they might read those chapters either before class or after class. And what you have is you have the words of the Buddha, you have a reference back to the original source teachings of the Buddha, and then you have words from me to be able to help you integrate the teachings into your life. What the Pali Canon is this is the original teachings of the Buddha. There are 45 books that are about this thick. And what this book series does is it's an excerpt. It extracts out of the Pali Canon the core central teachings so that you're able to gradually learn and develop on the path to enlightenment. The book that we're in now, which is volume 13, is titled Generosity. So this particular book has chapters all about generosity and the practice of generosity. The Buddha taught this giving and sharing, where you share your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources with other people. Because the cause of discontentedness, what's causing the mind to be angry and frustrated and agitated and all these other discontent feelings, is craving, desire, attachment, the wants, the expectation. The mind is longing and yearning. And if you get what you want, you get happy. But that happiness is temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. And ultimately, you end up back in those painful feelings. So if you get that perfect job that you've always wanted, you might get happy for a period of time, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, but eventually that wears off. And now the job is boring, or you don't feel as motivated anymore in the job. Or you might get so happy or excited with that new boyfriend or that new girlfriend that you got. And now you feel happy for a period of time, but then you feel angry and disgruntled later. This is what the mind is doing in the unenlightened state because of its cravings, desires, attachments, its longing, its yearning, its wanting things to be a certain way. So when the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So as long as this craving, desire, attachment is in the mind, then the mind's going to continually keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over and over and over again. So one of the ways to eliminate that longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of your affection is breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what we did this morning. But then generosity is also a practice that trains the mind to let go as well. So that when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you tend to hold on to things very tightly. You're not interested in giving and sharing. So the Buddha is teaching giving and sharing in order to train your mind to let go. In the frequency of your meditation and your practice of generosity, it trains the mind to let go, and let go, and stop seeing these external things as somehow going to lead to your permanent happiness, because money isn't going to lead to your permanent happiness. That bigger house isn't going to lead to happiness. That nicer car isn't going to lead to your happiness. And there's no harm with choosing to pursue goals of increased income or a nicer car, a nicer house. There's no harm in doing that. But it's when your mind falsely believes that this external thing is going to provide lasting satisfaction that it will chase after it. And it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. And that's setting yourself up and sabotaging yourself to ultimately experience these painful feelings, because you can't permanently get what you want. Because of the universal truth of impermanence and everything around you is impermanent, no matter what, when you chase after things, in some cases you're going to get what you want and you'll be happy, but that happiness is temporary and it ultimately fades away. And in some cases you're not going to get what you want and you're going to be angry or sad or frustrated. So when you can learn how to come to the middle, where you pursue things as a goal, as an objective or interest, your mind can be peaceful and joyful all the time. Whether you accomplish that particular thing or not, your mind can maintain its peacefulness and its joy. But it'll struggle and have difficulties in doing this when it doesn't understand the wisdom and it doesn't have the training of how to do this. So this book, number 13, is teaching you all about generosity and how to practice giving and sharing with other people. We learn this when we grow up as a child, but we tend to forget it as we get older. As we get older and we start working, we start applying our effort and energy towards various things, we want everything to be self-pleasing. We want everything to be about us. If I'm going to give you $5, I want something back in return that's either $5 or higher than $5. That's typically what we look for. But what the Buddha is teaching you is to be able to give and share your time, your effort, your energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. And this is pure generosity, where your mind is understanding that things aren't going to always be permanently satisfying to you, and that you have this interconnectivity between all of us and different beings. While we're unattached to each other, and that's what you ultimately would like to achieve, there is this interconnectivity between all of us, that what we choose to do and whatever decisions we make, we can actually harm others, or we can practice harmlessness where we're not harming others. And as we're practicing generosity and giving and sharing with each other, we can do this as a way to help other beings with our time, our effort, our energy, and our resources. And this will train your mind to let go. But when you have craving in your mind, the mind won't be interested in doing that. It's going to be mine, 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 mine. My money, my phone, my boyfriend, my girlfriend. And that's where the jealousy is going to come in. That's where the anger is going to come in. Because when these things start leaving you, or they get broken or they get lost, you'll be frustrated because the mind's not able to hold on to this thing permanently. So essentially the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be a certain way permanently. And this isn't possible because you live in an impermanent world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the chapters today, starting with chapter 81. This is in volume 13, where we're getting toward at the very end of the book series, the very end of this book, volume 13, where you're learning about generosity. And there's other things in here that the Buddha is teaching you to be able to help you to understand the path to enlightenment. And the way that I normally teach in this particular program is I invite people here at the temple and those of you guys online to read one of the chapters. And you can see these chapters, they're fairly short. This one's a page, 2 pages essentially. Somebody will volunteer to read this chapter if you guys would like. And then after somebody reads it, either here at the temple or online, then I share some teachings on that for, maybe a few minutes to help you understand what it is. And then afterwards, I open up to any and all questions that you have. So if you would like to volunteer to read this particular chapter, you can do so here at the temple or in Zoom. And if you'd like to read here at the temple, we have microphones in this white bowl. You just press the gray button, the lights come on, you hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you talk here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And for those of you guys that are in Zoom, if you would like to read, you can just electronically raise your hand and then open up your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. We'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. And if you end up getting one of these microphones because you would like to read, you can keep it with you because you or somebody else around you might decide to also volunteer. You might have a question, so you can just share the microphones around in the classroom. And then as we go, if you'd like to ask questions, the same thing, just use a microphone here at the temple, or if you're online, either in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, just put your question in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So is there someone that would like to read this particular chapter, chapter 81 in volume 13? Yes, sir. Vibhab. Feel free to get a microphone there. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Let me see. I'm not hearing it yet. There it is. It's on now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Chapter 81, Developing and Cultivating a Mind of Loving Kindness and Practicing the Way to the Ascetic. In that case, monk, you should train yourself thus. My mind will be firm and well settled internally. Arisen evil, unwholesome states will not obsess my mind. Thus you should train yourself. When, monk, your mind is firm and well settled internally, and arisen evil, unwholesome states do not obsess your mind, then you should train yourself thus. I will develop and cultivate the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, make it a vehicle and basis, carry it out, consolidate it, and properly undertake it. Thus you should train yourself. When, monk, this concentration has been developed and well developed by you in this way, then you should train yourself thus. I will develop and cultivate the liberation of my mind by compassion, the liberation of the mind by sympathetic joy, the liberation of the mind by equanimity. Make it a vehicle and basis, carry it out, consolidate it, and properly undertake it. Thus you should train yourself. He sees himself purified of all these evil, unwholesome states. He sees himself liberated from them. When he sees this, joyfulness is born in him. When he is joyful, joy is born in him. In one who is joyous, the body becomes tranquil. On whose body is tranquil feels pleasure. In one who feels pleasure, the mind becomes concentrated. He recites filling 1/4 with the mind filled with loving kindness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he recites filling the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, distinguished, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. He recites filling 1/4 with the mind filled with compassion, with the mind filled with sympathetic joy, with the mind filled with equanimity, abundant, distinguished, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Suppose there were a pond with clear, agreeable, cool water, transparent, with smooth banks and delightful. If a man, scorched and exhausted by hot weather, weary, parched and thirsty, came from the east or from the west or from the north or from the south or from where you will, having come upon the pond, he would quench his thirst and his hot weather fever. So too, monks, if anyone from a clan of nobles goes forth from the home life into homelessness, and after encountering the teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata, develops loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, and thereby gains internal peace, then because of that internal peace, he practices the way proper to the ascetic, I say. Just as if a mighty trumpeter were with little difficulty to make a proclamation to the four quarters, so by this cultivation and development, vaseta, by this liberation of the mind through loving kindness, through compassion, through sympathetic joy, through equanimity, he leaves nothing untouched, nothing unaffected in the sense of sphere. Monks, when the liberation of the mind by loving kindness has been pursued, developed and cultivated, made a vehicle and basis, carried out, consolidated, and properly undertaken, 11 benefits are to be predicted. What 11? One sleeps well, one awakens with joy, one does not have bad dreams, one is pleasing to human beings, one is pleasing to spirits, heavenly beings protect one, fire, poison, and weapons do not injure one, one's mind quickly becomes concentrated, one's facial complexion is serene, one dies unconfused, and if one does not penetrate further, one fares on to the Brahma world. When monks, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness has been repeatedly pursued, developed and cultivated, made a vehicle and basis, carried out, consolidated, and properly undertaken, these 11 benefits are to be predicted.
Okay, thank you, sir. So here what the Buddha is talking about is he's talking about what's referred to as the Brahma Viharas, or these four healthy mental states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are four healthy mental states that you need to cultivate on your journey to enlightenment. And they're actually antidotes or remedies to specific problems that are in the mind that the Buddha discovered, certain symptoms that you experience. So the mind will experience the symptom of anger or hatred or ill will or frustration or agitation or annoyance or some other discontent feeling coming from this anger or ill will. And the way that you transform that, essentially rewiring the mind, is you need to arise this loving kindness in the mind. What loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. It's active goodwill. And there's a certain meditation that we do in order to essentially rewire the mind so that now the mind can be more loving and more kind, and you won't have this hatefulness or this annoyance or even the slightest dislike. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't dislike other human beings. Right now, if there's certain people who you dislike, that's because your mind is craving for them to be a certain way. And when they're not that way and the mind's not getting what it expects, it gets angry towards this person. And that anger is coming from within your own mind. Just like that dislike or that hostility or bitterness is coming from your own mind. That's your own mind that's producing that. But you can transform this and you can arise this loving kindness in your mind where you can have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you can have this active goodwill towards others. And it will remedy this anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions like the frustration, agitation, annoyance, and so forth. So that by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards other beings. And then the same thing with compassion. What compassion is compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others, where the opposite of this would be like indifference, where you see somebody having something unfortunate happen and you're like, oh well, so what? I don't care. You know, some people might say, oh, that's their karma. Who cares? I don't care about what's going on with them. Well, that's one side of the spectrum, right? Where there's just this indifference and this non-caring attitude. The other side of the spectrum is this worrying about the world. Like, oh my goodness, there's a war. Or, oh my goodness, children don't have food. Or, oh my goodness, somebody got murdered last week. Oh, this is so horrible. I feel so scared and so worried about this world. So that's like the two opposite sides of the spectrum, where maybe the mind is holding on to the world, wanting it to be a certain way, and there's this worry and anxiety about it. And on the other side, there's this indifference and this non-caring attitude. And what the Buddha is teaching you is to come to the middle, because on either sides of this, you're not going to experience peace and joy. But when you come to the middle with your compassion, you have a concern for the misfortune of others. And in some situations, you might take action to help others, but in other situations, maybe you don't. But what the compassion is not about the action. It's about the mental state of of having the mental state of concern for the misfortune of others. And you might choose to do something in some situations, and in other situations you might not be able to do something, but you can maintain your concern within your mind. So this will remedy this worrying and this anxiety about the world, and it will remedy this indifference where you could just care less about what happens to other people. Then there's something called sympathetic joy. What sympathetic joy is where you have joy for others' success, whether you contributed to it or not. So the opposite of this would be envy or jealousy, right? Where the mind's jealous or envious of other beings. So let's just say that you were at work and maybe you and 2 or 3 or 4 of your other coworkers were applying for a promotion at work, and maybe somebody else gets it, right? And you don't actually get the job. You might be jealous. You might be envious. Or say somebody gets a brand new house, or they're going on vacation, or they get a new boyfriend or girlfriend. You might be envious of this. Or they get a new car. You might be jealous of this kind of thing. And if that's the case, that's because of your mind's craving. You're wanting this particular thing and you don't have it. And when somebody else gets it, this jealousy arises in the mind. It's being caused by the mind itself. It's not because of somebody else. It's because of your own mind that's having craving, desire, attachment. And you can eliminate this jealousy by arising sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the exact opposite of jealousy, where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So if you notice that your coworker gets a promotion or gets a job, even if it was something that you were interested in obtaining yourself, you can train your mind to be joyful in that situation. That, hey, well, that's wonderful, Barbara. Congratulations. I'm really pleased for you. Oh, you got a new house? Oh, that's excellent. I know you've been interested in getting a new house. Good for you, right? You're not getting a new house. You're just choosing to stay wherever you're at. Maybe you're completely content with your, studio apartment. Right? But this person's got a, 5,000 square foot house perhaps, or, a 400 square meter house. It's like, hey, enjoy it. Wonderful. That's great for you. Right? But we don't need to be jealous about that. But if there's craving in your mind and you want that thing and you can't get it, you'll have jealousy arising in your mind. Maybe someone gets a new car or a boyfriend or girlfriend. Hey, that's wonderful. Great. Congratulations. I'm pleased for you. Right? So you're going to need to arise this in your mind through applying effort. That where you see your mind being jealous, you arise this sympathetic joy where you're joyful for other success, even if you didn't contribute to it. And then the fourth mental state that you're looking to cultivate, in addition to all the other things that you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is equanimity. What equanimity is calmness and composure, evenness of temper. This is where the mind, even in a difficult situation, you can maintain your calmness and composure. So for example, say you get a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible car accident and she's on her way to the hospital and she's in the back of an ambulance. You might get shaken up with this. If you have a craving for mom to always be healthy, right? Oftentimes we think it's love that's causing the mind to be shaken up in that situation. But love, as you heard, is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't cause your mind to be shaken up. The active goodwill towards mom or dad or whoever, that doesn't cause your mind to be shaken up. What's causing the mind to be shaken up when you get that phone call that mom's in the back of an ambulance on the way to the hospital is that the mind is craving for mom to be permanently healthy. And it's not possible because you live in an impermanent world. Mom and dad's going to get sick and mom and dad are going to die. And so are we, because we're all impermanent. We can't be in this world permanently. But when the mind's craving for grandma or grandpa or mom or dad or brothers or sisters or even ourselves to be healthy permanently, then our mind gets shaken up when we're confronted with this impermanence, because the mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. So if you arise equanimity in your mind, then you can be calm and composed, especially in difficult situations. Because rushing across town to hurry up and get to the hospital and barge in with a mind all shaken up, this isn't helping you, and it's not helping your family either, because you've just shown up at the hospital with your mind all shaken up, and now you got to talk to the doctors and nurses and try to figure out what's going on so you can make some decisions to help mom or dad. And you might have even gotten in a car accident yourself on the way to the hospital if you're rushing across town. But if you can maintain your calmness and composure, or in other words, if you can have this equanimity in your mind, then now you can remain calm and composed. You get the phone call that mom is sick and she's in the back of the ambulance. You think to yourself, hey, she's in the best possible hands. She's in the back of an ambulance with emergency medical technicians. They are attending to her. She's about to arrive to a hospital. That's the best place for her. Me rushing across town isn't going to help anything at all. So let me just calmly grab my keys and let me calmly make my way to the hospital so that when I show up, I can talk to the doctors and nurses in a way that my mind can understand what it is that they're sharing. And now I can make wise decisions to be able to help mom. You're not helping mom by rushing across town and showing up with a shaken up mind. So the Buddha is teaching you how to practice equanimity. And you're going to need to apply the effort to arise this equanimity in the mind. And there's another aspect to equanimity too, which is treating everyone fairly, treating everyone equally, because the root word of equanimity is equal. Whereas if, say, you were a boss, or say you're a parent and you treated one child one way and another child another way, or you treated one employee one way and you treated another employee another way, people are going to get angry at you. People are going to get frustrated. You didn't cause their anger, but you're practicing in such a way where you're not treating everyone equally. And now that anger is going to be vented at you. They don't realize they're causing their own anger, but now you're going to need to deal with it. So one of the things that the Buddha is teaching you, in addition to how to train your own mind, is he's teaching you how to navigate the world of all these unenlightened beings. Whereas if you treat people differently, you treat one child one way, another child another way, or one employee one way and another employee another way, or if you give one neighbor a little bit of food to share with them and you don't offer it to the others, you're going to have people that their jealousy is arising. And of course, you're not causing that jealousy, but they don't know that. They're not aware of that because they don't have the wisdom to understand that their mind is causing it themselves. So the Buddha is teaching you how to navigate the world in a way that you're less likely to experience these kinds of things. So by you practicing where you treat everyone equally, you'll be able to find that your relationships can be more harmonious. Whereas if you treat one child one way and another way, you're going to have difficulties in your home. Or the same thing at a workplace or professional environment. If you treat all your employees equally, you'll find that you have more harmonious relationships with your employees. So these are called the 4 healthy mental states, or the 4 Brahma Viharas. It's loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And you're going to need to arise this in your mind because it exactly antidotes and eliminates certain symptoms that you experience in your own mind. And now when you practice this, you'll see that these things end up dissipating and eliminating from the mind. And then there's other teachings that you would need as well. So then ultimately the Buddha gets to this point where he says, okay, having practiced these mental states, these are the benefits that one will experience. And you'll see this for yourself. The Buddha is telling you this cause and effect, or this action and result. He's showing you this natural law of karma. He's helping you to awaken to this natural law that, hey, when you eliminate all those unhealthy qualities like the anger, hatred, ill will, the frustration, the dislike, when you eliminate the worrying about the world, when you eliminate the indifference about the world, when you eliminate the jealousy and the envy, when you eliminate this shaken up mind, when the mind can't practice equanimity, then he's saying, hey, you're going to sleep better. Right? You sleep really well, right? You can see the truth in that. That's the cause and effect. He's showing you that. He's saying that, hey, you can awaken with joy, right? Because you had a good night's sleep, you can awaken with the joy in the mind, right? You don't have bad dreams, right? If you're plagued by nightmares and stuff like that, that's because your mind's holding on to certain things. You can get to the point where you liberate the mind and you free the mind of the things that are causing that. He talks about one is pleasing to human beings. That's what I was sharing when we were talking about equanimity, that if you treat everyone fairly, you'll find that people are pleased to be around you because you're treating everyone fairly instead of some people one way and other people another way. Here he's talking about one is pleasing to spirits. This is the ghost realm, or the afflicted spirit realm. These are beings that are interested in causing calamity in the world, but you can practice in such a way where you're pleasing. Heavenly beings protect one. There are these other realms that you can independently verify that there's these different realms, and heavenly beings are right here in the same time and space as us. They're not in a far distant land somewhere, just like hell beings, afflicted spirits, and heavenly beings. They're not in these far distant land. They're like right here in the same time and space. So heavenly beings, when you're into wholesome things, they will tend to be around you and spend time helping you in certain ways. Then when he's talking about fire, poison, and weapons do not injure one, what he's talking about here is that an individual who has wisdom in their mind, they're going to make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. They're not going to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So it's not like if you practice these things and you held a flame over your hand that you wouldn't get injured. It means that you're going to make wise decisions about the way that you navigate the world, and you're not going to be in a situation where fire, poison, or weapons injure you, because you're not going to be in those places in order for those things to occur. One's mind becomes quickly concentrated because when you clear out the pollution of your mind, you're going to notice that it performs optimally. That's what I was talking about at the beginning, that there's more focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory as you're training your mind to get closer and closer to enlightenment, that it performs more optimally. One's facial complexion is serene. When the mind is happy, when the mind is experiencing the peace and the joy, you'll notice that your facial expression represents that. Like if you're angry and disgruntled, you're going to kind of appear that way, right? So as you train your mind to have less and less pollution, you'll notice that there's more serenity in your facial appearance. Then one doesn't die one dies unconfused. You don't die confused. When you lack wisdom, you might die in what's called a confused state, that you don't know what's next or what's going to happen or how you're going to experience any particular situation after death, and you might be confused. But when you study these teachings and you see the wisdom in the teachings and you train your mind and you can independently verify the teachings, at the time of death, you're going to know 100%. If you're going to be reborn, you will know that. Or if you're not going to be reborn, you will know that, because your mind will have seen the truth very clearly through independently verifying this. So you won't experience confusion, where oftentimes people are afraid of death or they fear death. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have fear of death anymore. And you don't have confusion about what may or may not come next. And then if one does not penetrate further, one fares on to the Brahma world. What the Buddha is talking about here is the heavenly realm. And this is a particular realm that one can be reborn into. But this isn't the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. And having done so, you won't actually be reborn anywhere. But if you fall short of enlightenment, there's the potential to be reborn into the heavenly world. And that's essentially what he's sharing here. So here he's just kind of talking about the 4 healthy mental states and to train your mind to cultivate these, developing the mind and practicing this way that's conducive to these particular benefits. So any questions here, either at the temple or online, you guys would like to ask about this? I'm going to check online and see if we have any questions here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what you have here is you have the words of the Buddha in each one of these chapters. And then at the end of the chapter, you have a reference here. This takes you back to the original source teachings in the Pali Canon, those 45 volumes of books. It takes you all the way back to that. If you would like to see what the Buddha was talking about before this or after this, you can see that by going back to the original. And then you've got words for me here to be able to help you reflect on this and to be able to integrate it into your life and help you. So each one of these chapters is structured in that way. All right, so is there someone who would like to read this one, chapter 82? Yes, sir. Yeah, just the gray one. You'll see the lights come on and then they'll end up going off after. There you go.
Aspirations are not obtained by means of prayer. Householders, there are these 5 things that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. What 5? Long life, householder, is wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. 2. Beauty, householder, is wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. 3. Peacefulness, householder, is wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. 4. Fame, householder, is wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. 5. The heavens are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. These are the 5 things that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. These 5 things, householder, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world, I say, are not obtained by means of prayers or aspirations. If these 5 things that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world could be obtained by means of prayers or aspirations, who here would be lacking in anything?
Let me teach from here, and then we can go on, Christopher. So here, what the Buddha is essentially saying is that if you could obtain things through prayer, then why would anybody want anything? Because we'd already have everything that we need. If we could just sit down and pray to some being, and then boom, we would acquire that particular thing, then why would anybody have a desire for anything or want anything? Because we would just pray to essentially this genie in a bottle, and then boom, we would be able to acquire whatever it is that we would want. So here the Buddha is saying that, okay, long life is something that people desire. Beauty, peacefulness, fame in the heavens, being reborn in the heavenly world, is something that a lot of people want. And if you could just obtain those things through prayer, then why would anybody want anything? Because we'd already have it. It's like a genie in a bottle. We just pray to somebody, and then boom, we'd be able to get it. And this is one of the delusions or confusions or misunderstandings or the beliefs that people have, is that somehow you can just pray to some being and then you'll instantly get what you want. And you can see that that's not true. You can test it for yourself. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha are to be learned, investigated, and examined. You can then reflect on it as you're reflecting to be able to see whether it's true or false. And then you can practice. So you could pray right now. You could say, dear whoever it is that you're praying to, give me whatever, a new house, a new car, lots and lots of money, whatever it is that you would like. Go ahead and see if it shows up for you. So you can test what the Buddha is sharing here. Is he sharing with you, you can obtain things through prayer. And then what you're going to see is what he's going to ultimately share with you of how you obtain these things. So go ahead, Christopher.
2. Householder, the noble disciple who aspires beauty, ought not to pray for beauty or excite in it passively or excite in it or passively yearn for it. A noble disciple who aspires beauty should practice the way conducive to beauty.
Okay, that was the same thing up here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's okay.
It's
the same exact thing.
Okay.
So you're just going to read that same thing. It's just going to repeat over and over. So this was about long life up here.
Long life, beauty. For when he practices the way conducive to beauty, it leads to obtaining beauty, and he gains beauty, either heavenly or human. 3. Householder, the noble disciple who aspires peacefulness, ought not to pray for peacefulness or excite in it or passively yearn for it. A noble disciple who aspires peacefulness should practice the way conducive to peacefulness. For when he practices the way conducive to peacefulness, it leads to obtaining peacefulness, and he gains peacefulness either heavenly or human. 4. Householder, the noble disciple who aspires fame, ought not to pray for fame or excite in it or passively yearn for it. A noble disciple who aspires fame should practice the way conducive to fame. For when he practices the way conducive to fame, it leads to obtaining fame, and he gains fame either heavenly or human. 5. Householder, the noble disciple who aspires the heavens, ought not to pray for the heavens or excite in them or passively yearn for them. A noble disciple who aspires the heavens should practice the way conducive to heaven. For when he practices the way conducive to heaven, it leads to obtaining the heavens, and he gains the heavens. For one desiring long life, beauty, fame, acclaim, heaven, high families, and lofty delights following in succession, the wise practice motivation in doing deeds of merit. Being motivated, the wise person secures both kinds of good, the good in this life and the good in the future life. By obtaining the good, the steadfast one is called one of wisdom.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what the Buddha is saying here is that, hey, if you would like any of these things, then practice the way that's conducive to those things. What he means is make decisions that lead to those particular things. So if one is interested in, let's just say, acquiring peacefulness, that's what he's saying here in the third one. Well, if you're just praying to experience peacefulness, you're not going to be able to get to peacefulness, because as long as you're arguing with your mom and dad and your brothers and sisters and your coworkers, your life's not going to be peaceful, because you haven't practiced, you haven't trained your mind to practice peacefulness. When you practice being peaceful, then you can experience peacefulness. But as long as the mind doesn't understand how to do that, it might resort to something like this, where you're just maybe praying for your life to become more peaceful, but you haven't cultivated the wisdom of how to accomplish that. So the Buddha is teaching you to train your mind, to cultivate wisdom. Practice the way conducive to peacefulness. Don't just passively yearn for it. Don't just pray for it, but arise the wisdom of how to attain a peaceful life. And it starts with training your own mind. So all of these things, he's explaining exactly the same thing, that you need to make decisions where you're practicing the cause and effect and working towards these goals and objectives, not just yearning for it and not just praying for it. And then ultimately he shares down here just kind of a way of summarizing that. And he's talking about practicing deeds of merit, which is part of generosity. Is we practice merit where we're giving and sharing, where what generosity is, where you're giving and sharing with anybody. What merit is where you're giving and sharing with maybe a temple or ordained practitioners or teachers to be able to see the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. So if you were interested in obtaining this long life, this beauty, this peacefulness, the fame, and what was the other one he had here? The heavens. If you were interested in obtaining any of these things, you're going to need the wisdom of how to do that. So coming in contact with teachers and ordained practitioners to produce merit is what's going to help you to do that, because as you're sharing gifts of generosity to help the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, this is going to allow you to cultivate the wisdom that you need to be able to accomplish these things. And of course, the goal isn't to yearn and long and chase after these things, but perhaps you're interested in having a long life. Well, if you're interested in that, there's ways to be able to accomplish that. And the Buddha teaches you how to do that. But as long as your mind is angered and hateful, you're not going to be able to accomplish that. So there's ways to train your mind to be able to acquire these types of things. So any questions here on this particular chapter? I have a question from Helena.
Thank you, David. First of all, why are there so many repetitions in those texts? They're not oral anymore.
Yeah, so we captured, or I shouldn't say we, the people during the lifetime of the Buddha that studied with him, shortly after his death, they captured the teachings in the way that he talked, and he talked very repetitively. Because in an oral tradition, this is how you get people to remember things, is you give them lists like the 5 precepts, the 10 fetters, the 7 factors of enlightenment, these kinds of things. You create lists. You tell stories, because people, when they hear stories, they will tend to remember those things. And then you say it repetitively over and over and over again. So they captured it in the way that the Buddha taught it. And it actually helps you to have it repetitive like this, because even though it's no longer an oral tradition, there's a certain component to it that is oral. Like me sitting here teaching you, this is the oral part of it. So by hearing it more than one time, it actually helps you. And this is why some students take certain classes and courses and retreats and even reads that book multiple times, because when you repetitively do something, it'll soak in more and more. So I've had students read this particular book. They tell me 8 to 12 times they've read it, and each time they're learning something new because of the repetition. So the Buddha taught that way because it helps you to be able to remember the teachings, because when you remember them, then you can actually practice them. But if you don't remember them, then you wouldn't be able to practice them. So this almost kind of imprints it on your mind that it helps you to remember the teachings so you can practice them, and then you can actually experience the results of the practice.
Okay, understandable. Thank you. And then the mind has a strong desire to be reborn in the heavenly realm. Mm-hmm. I even caught myself today thinking, actually, it would be super nice to die as a non-returner, so I could have like one epic life in the heavenly realm. Mm-hmm. So any advice, please, on how to drop that desire?
Yeah, one way to think about this is that anything that you're wanting, you've already obtained it at some point in a previous life. So why keep doing it over and over and over again? So like if you see anybody experiencing something fortunate, like maybe they're rich and famous and wealthy, and you're like, oh, I wish I could be rich, famous, and wealthy. The Buddha teaches you that you've had so many countless lives in the past that you've already done those things. You've already experienced those things. Same thing with misfortune too. He says anybody you see experiencing misfortune, you've experienced those things in the past too. This helps you to not judge people that are experiencing unfortunate circumstances, that you realize like, hey, I've experienced those things too. I'm just at a different place in my life than this person. No need to judge this person. So if you think about it like, hey, you've already been in the heavenly realm. You've already done that, been there, done that. Why do you keep wanting to do it over and over and over again? Just let it go and realize that that's not a wonderful destination that is permanent. Sometimes people think the heavenly realm is a permanent existence, but if you look at the world around you, you can see that it's not permanent. And beings oftentimes in the heavenly realm are reborn back down into the lower realms, because you can get into the heavenly realm as a non-returner, as you mentioned, but there's other ways to get into the heavenly realm too. It's not just one door to get into the heavenly realm. So some beings enter into the heavenly realm, they don't get to enlightenment then, and they're reborn down into the other realms. And that would be unfortunate if that occurred for you. So by training your mind to let go of that desire, you can be content and peaceful in the present moment, where what craving, desire, attachment is going to do is it's always going to want something else. The grass is always greener on the other side. The mind's going to be like, oh, I don't like this human state. If I could just be reborn as a heavenly being, everything would be perfect. The mind always wants something else that it doesn't have. So what you're looking to do is get to a point where you're peaceful and joyful and content in the present moment, where it's like, no, you know what? This is a human existence. I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to enjoy this existence that I'm in now. And hey, if there is an existence in the future, so be it. But let me just focus on this current existence and not long and yearn for this other existence. And that's how you can let go of it, is just realize you've already done it. You've already been there. No need to, long and yearn for it.
That's super helpful and such a relief. Thank you. And my last question would be, is there any way to combine an interest in beauty with letting go of the feather of personal view?
Yeah, so what the Buddha's talking about here is people aspire for this beauty. And the thing is that if you practice the teachings and you train your mind and you get rid of the pollutions of your mind, where he's talking in that previous discourse about how your facial complexion becomes serene, that's how you get to beauty, is by purifying your mind, getting closer and closer to enlightenment, and you will have a more beautiful appearance or a more handsome appearance. But wanting it and longing and yearning for it is not what you're interested in, because that would be personal existence view. But if you just understand that as you practice the teachings and you purify your mind, it's becoming more pure, your appearance will continue to improve. You'll see that your facial complexion, your skin, your eyes, your fingernails, your hair, everything will grow more healthy, because you're starting to eat healthy, you're starting to drink healthy, you're sleeping better. You'll notice that this body will become more physically beautiful or handsome as you purify your mind and you're making wiser decisions about so many different things in your life.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
I had a similar question about other things he's talking about, like fame, acclaim, is the same kind of things you're aspiring for. I mean, different people aspire for different things. And so, like, if somebody is aspiring for fame, acclaim, is that also, is that not attachment to or trying to aspire for something like that?
Yeah, so there's an aspiration, and then there's a craving, desire, attachment, right? There's a longing, yearning, and chasing after something. That's what's going to produce the discontentedness. But if you're aspiring for something, if you're working towards something, you can actually do that without a craving, desire, attachment. So let's just say that you're an artist. Let's say you're an artist, and you know that in order to be a really successful artist, you're going to need to have a certain amount of fame, like a certain amount of or a certain amount of public knowledge of people knowing about your work. And if you were just in your home, maybe doing your artwork, you might just be able to help share your artwork with a few local people. But if more and more people know who you are and the quality of your work, you can become more successful and help people to appreciate your artwork, right? So you can actually aspire for being more known publicly, because this is going to benefit the people and benefit you as well by sharing your artwork more widely. So you can work towards that as an aspiration or as a goal or an objective by making wise decisions to work towards that without the craving, desire, attachment. So just the fact that one is interested in being famous doesn't mean it's a craving, desire, attachment, because that could be a path towards being helpful. Like, for example, say like a politician, say you're like a local politician on your local school board, and you know that, hey, you have a lot of great ideas and you would like to be able to help more and more people in the world. And in order to accomplish this, you're going to have some amount of being known in the public, and we call it fame, and it's usually looked at as maybe a bad thing, right? If you're craving and longing and yearning for it, it's going to produce discontentedness. But you can go out into the public, you can talk with people, you can meet people, you can go to public events, you can become more well known in your community, which is going to elevate your public appearance and allow you to get higher and higher positions as a politician, and then ultimately be able to help more people. So sometimes the unenlightened mind likes to look at something as all bad or all good, but in reality, these things can actually be helpful. Fame can be used in a very helpful way. You know, there's some famous people that use their public fame in order to support charities or nonprofit organizations and things like this. So you can use being known publicly as a way to benefit other people. But if you did it with craving, desire, attachment, and longing and yearning, it's going to end in your discontentedness. So you can work towards this through certain goals and objectives and certain decisions that you're making to be able to help you to help others. And this could be a very healthy way to acquire public, being known publicly to others.
I guess the second question I had was, how does merit, doing deeds of merit, I guess is he saying that it increases the chances of you achieving fame, beauty, whatever you desire? Is that's the general idea here? So that the good karma will actually help you achieve those things. It's an indirect achievement, right? Not a direct achievement.
Yeah. Whenever you see him talking about merit, right away, there's two things you should think about. Is one, it's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So whenever you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, it's helping your mind to have less discontentedness, because practicing merit is generosity directed toward the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. So practicing generosity in producing merit, it's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So that's the first thing you should think about. And that's going to ultimately help you acquire any of these things. And then the second thing that you should think about with merit is that as you're giving and sharing and you're practicing this merit, you're coming in contact with people who have wisdom about the teachings of the Buddha. Because in order to practice merit, you, as he guides you throughout all of his teachings, is to find someone who's either in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing to become one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. So in that case, you're coming in contact with a person in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th stage of enlightenment. And now coming in contact with that person, you're going to gain the wisdom of the natural law of karma to now be able to accomplish these things. So it's not that just if you give, they're going to magically get this particular thing coming back to you, but instead by giving, it's helping your mind to reduce craving, desire, attachment. And by producing merit, by coming in contact with someone who's wise about the teachings, you have the opportunity to ask questions and get insight and wisdom about what it takes for you to get closer and closer to enlightenment. And that's where the benefit's coming in. And so whenever you see the word merit, automatically think elimination of craving, desire, attachment, and coming in contact with someone who you can cultivate wisdom and now become more enlightened yourself.
Oh, thank you. This is good, clearing up the thought process here. So I guess the final question, and this is specifically talking about merit, not generosity in generally, right? This is specifically saying merit with people who are on the path.
Yeah, merit is a particular type of generosity. So you've got generosity, which you're going to need to practice with lots of people around you, right? Your family, your coworkers, your neighbors. You're going to need to be practicing generosity. Even with people you don't know, you're going to need to practice generosity in order to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, and be able to get to enlightenment. But you're also going to need to practice a certain amount of generosity towards the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, because by that point, you would have seen enough improvement to the condition of your mind that doubt will be eliminated from your mind, and you'll be interested in supporting the teachings so that other people can get access to them, because you'll know how impactful they are. So merit is generosity. It's just directed towards the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha. And the benefits are similar, but there's increased benefits when you're practicing merit, because you're now making the teachings available for other people, and the world can collectively become more gentle, more peaceful, more loving, and more kind, because the teachings are more and more available throughout the world.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yep.
Thank you, David. So yeah, this is saying that these aspirations won't be achieved by prayer, and I think that's explained well. But does the general idea of prayer feature at all in Buddha's teachings? I mean, is there a wise way of praying? Can you pray for wise things? Yes. Or is it just excluded, the whole concept of prayer?
Yeah, I've never seen anywhere where the Buddha's guiding people to pray. This is the only thing I've ever seen from the Buddha, and I haven't read the entire Pali Canon, and you don't need to read the entire Pali Canon in order to get to enlightenment, but this is the only thing that I've ever seen that talks about prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. So he never instructs one to pray. He never guides them to pray. But here he's just saying, hey, you're not going to get what you want based in prayer. You need to gain wisdom and cultivate wisdom and make decisions that lead to these things. That's what you need to be able to do. But what I do, and I'm not sure if you've ever been in any of those classes, when I teach chapter 18 from volume 1 about God, I teach people like, hey, if you're going to pray, these are the kind of things that you would like to do during prayer. Is because people nowadays do pray and they have a certain amount of comfort in prayer. But if you treat prayer like you're asking a being, either God or some other being, like a genie in a bottle, then you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment, because your mind's craving and longing and yearning. So if you're sitting down like, please, God, give me this, give me that, give me this. This is the mind craving, desiring, attached. And it's also got a certain amount of confusion or delusion. It doesn't realize that the way that you accomplish anything in life is through cause and effect, or cause and effect God. But he doesn't necessarily teach about how to have a relationship with this being other than have loving kindness and compassion for all beings. But what I'm sharing with individuals is how to eliminate fear of this being, or thinking that this being is controlling us, or thinking that this being is going to magically give you something. This isn't the way this being functions. So there are ways to have what I would describe as healthy prayer, where you're able to have a relationship with this being, but more as a relationship versus wanting something from this being.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know if it's, I can somehow see how right prayer can also fit into developing right intention. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not praying for anything other than to get better at the practicing the Eightfold Path, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just remember that, you know, with God, God will guide you if you decide you have a relation with God, but you can get to enlightenment without a relationship with God too. But if you're interested in having a relationship, this being will guide you, but you're still going to need to do the work. I think you know that you're going to need to investigate the Eightfold Path and learn it closely and practice it. And this being will guide you from time to time, but you're doing, you know, all the work. And this being is just essentially giving you fatherly advice, so to speak, to help guide you along this path. But not when you want it and how you want it. It's when this being decides it would like to give you advice. And if you're open to that advice and guidance, this being will guide you. But if you're not interested in it, this being won't guide you. They're not interested in just peering into your life and telling you what to do and not to do. So prayer is a way of acknowledging that relationship and helping this being know, like, hey, I'm interested in your guidance and you're welcome to share it with me at any point that you like. Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? I saw something, I guess it went away. There's someone on Zoom that had a question. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. Let me just check before we move on. YouTube and Facebook. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. Okay, so let's go into this last chapter. We usually do 10 chapters a day, and I do that in the evening times, but let's do the first part of this chapter up to this point right here. This will help you to understand something about the life story of the Buddha. So is there someone that would like to read this chapter? We'll just read like the first page and a quarter of it. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Should a monk be involved with gold and silver? Whether a monk should take gold and silver, or should get another to take it for him, or should consent to it being kept in deposit for him, there is an offence of expiation involving forfeiture. Whatever monk should engage in various transactions in which gold and silver is used, there is an offence of expiation involving forfeiture. Whatever monk should engage in various kinds of bartering, there is an offence of expiation involving forfeiture. In case of a king, or one in the service of a king, or a Brahmin or a householder should send a robe fund for a monk by a messenger saying, "Have got a robe in exchange for this robe fund. Present the monk so and so with a robe." Then if this messenger approaching the monk should say, "Honoured sir, this robe fund was bought by the Venerable One. Let the Venerable One accept this robe fund," then the messenger should be spoken to thus by this monk: "Sir, we do not accept a robe fund, but we accept a robe, if it is at the right time and if it is allowable." If the messenger should say to the monk, "But there is someone who is a Venerable One's attendant," then monks and attendants should be pointed to by the monk in need of a robe, either one who is engaged in the monastery or a householder practitioner, saying, "This is the monk's attendant." If the messenger instructing this attendant approaching that monk should speak thus: "Honoured sir, I have instructed the person whom the Venerable One pointed out as an attendant. Let the Venerable One approach at the right time, and he will present you with a robe." Then monks, if that monk is in need of a robe, approaching that attendant, he should state and remind him 2 or 3 times, saying, "Sir, I am in need of a robe." If while sitting and reminding 2 or 3 times he succeeds in obtaining that robe, that is good. If he does not succeed in obtaining it, he should stand silently for it 4 times, 5 times, 6 times at the utmost. If he succeeds in obtaining that robe, standing silently for it 4 times, 5 times, 6 times at the utmost, that is good. If he, exerting himself further, succeeds in obtaining that robe, there is an offence of expiation involving forfeiture. If he does not succeed in obtaining it, he should either go himself to where the robe fund was brought for him, or a messenger should be sent to say, "That robe fund which you, sirs, sent for a monk is not of any use to that monk. Let the gentlemen make use of their own. Let your own things be not lost. This is the proper course in this case."
Okay, thank you, Steve. There's some more here which has additional portion of another discourse, but I'll just focus on this and kind of help you guys to understand what's happening here. So what the Buddha is essentially sharing is that he didn't allow any of the ordained practitioners to acquire silver and gold, because this was the currency at the time, and this could cause the mind to have craving, desire, attachment for wealth. So the ordained practitioners during the lifetime of the Buddha would live right alongside of the students. So the students would invite an ordained practitioner, and even including the Buddha, into their home, and they would sleep in their home for a week or 2 or a month or 2 or what have you. And then they would be able to learn with the Buddha or with this ordained practitioner right in their home. And then I'm sure in the evening times, the village would come together, and the whole village would probably learn from this particular person. So they would have their food, their clothing, their shelter, and their medical care all provided by their students, because they're living right there alongside of their students. So there was no need for money for the ordained practitioners, because everything that they needed was right there, because they were living alongside of their students. Where nowadays, we don't have that. Where nowadays, ordained practitioners and teachers do accept some financial contributions, because there's not a student right there every single time that a teacher or an ordained practitioner needs to acquire a particular thing. But as it relates to a robe, a ordained practitioner isn't going to use their money to go out and buy a robe, or at least they shouldn't. The robes are supposed to be offered by the household practitioners, and that's the way that the Buddha taught it. So the Buddha was a prince destined to become a king. He was very rich and very wealthy, and then he stepped away from that and he went into this life of homelessness where he just lived based on donations from the people around him. But he still wouldn't accept gold and silver, and he didn't have his students do that either, that they would just accept food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. And this ensured that their mind didn't get attached to a certain currency. And sometimes people would even offer land, and he wouldn't accept that either. Sometimes they would offer animals. He didn't accept animals as an offering. Sometimes people would offer servants and slaves or women, and he didn't accept that as an offering. He would only accept food, clothing, shelter, and medical care as what he would accept, because that's what he needed in order to sustain his life. So here you can see him talking about that, even to the point of talking about bartering, that any time that a teacher or ordained practitioner is sharing the teachings, if they're sharing the teachings in the way that the Buddha taught, they should be offered at no cost. If you ever see a price tag associated with a course or a class or a retreat or something like this, the person who's hosting that hasn't understood what it takes for their students to get to enlightenment. In order for a student to get to enlightenment, they need to practice generosity. And if you put a price on your classes, your students aren't able to practice generosity. They're just paying a price to get a particular thing, and there hasn't been any generosity from you as the teacher, and there hasn't been any generosity from the student either. There needs to be a significant amount of generosity in order for people to get to enlightenment. So as soon as someone puts a price on their course, it hinders the students from being able to practice generosity and thus be able to train their mind to let go of craving, desire, attachment, and get close to enlightenment. Also, the other thing that it does is it hinders people who are disadvantaged and maybe impoverished from being able to get access to the very teachings that they need. So as a teacher, if I put a price tag on my courses or on anything that I do, right away, the people who need the teachings the most and who are struggling the most, they wouldn't be able to access these teachings because they don't have the resources to be able to afford, to be able to acquire those things. So if a teacher is teaching the truth and they know that they're teaching the truth, they should have no problem sharing that at no cost. And that then if students are interested in practicing generosity, seeing the truth and seeing that it's improving the condition of their mind and the condition of their life, the students would be willing to practice generosity at some point potentially. So the Buddha teaches his students to not even barter, that we're not giving you teachings because we want something back from you. We're not wanting money. We're not wanting you to give us anything or anything like that. A teacher shouldn't have any expectations or wants from their students. Instead, it should just be sharing and practice of generosity from this teacher to the students. And then if the students choose, they can practice generosity too. It's up to them. So this is what happened from the lifetime of the Buddha all the way up until now. If people are practicing in that way, where they're freely giving and sharing of the teachings, this is what the Buddha taught, to practice generosity as a teacher and not want or expect things from your students. And then if the students would like to practice generosity, they can, but there shouldn't be any expectation of that occurring. And if a student learns enough and they see the improvement to the condition of their mind, they will eventually decide on their own to practice some generosity. It's up to them to decide for themselves that that's what they would like to do. But there shouldn't be any expectation from the teacher. And that's why the Buddha didn't allow people to, during his lifetime, to accept gold and silver and things like this, or land or other things like this. But nowadays, we need to be able to accept some of those things in order to pay for gas in my motorbike on the way here. You're not standing right there at the gas station to be able to help me with that, or, certain food or certain clothing or things like this. So a teacher can accept financial resources like money and train their mind to not be attached to it. Then someone needs to understand how to do that in order to be able to practice in that way. And that's possible for someone to do that. And there's ability to learn how to do that if somebody's interested in doing that. Not only as a teacher, but even as a household practitioner. Because if you're making money of any sort, you need to learn how to not be attached to that money. So if a teacher is accepting some form of money and they've been able to get to enlightenment, they would be able to help you and guide you in how to train your mind to not be attached to whatever money you are getting, because you're going to need certain financial resources in your life to be able to sustain your life. And if you are attached to it, meaning you're forming your inner feelings based on your money, then you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. And this is why if your bank account is one balance, you might be happy and excited. But if your bank account balance goes below to a certain level, you might be sad or frustrated or irritated. That's because the mind's attached to the money. But you can get to a point where you don't experience up and down emotions based on what's going on with your money, because your money is impermanent. It's not going to be with you permanently. But if you hold on to it, wanting it to be permanent, you will struggle and have difficulties when your bank account's going up and down, or maybe you're getting close to the end of life and you're going to die and you got to leave your money behind. You're going to really struggle with that. Or maybe somebody gets sick or ill, or maybe you get sick or ill and you got to spend this money to fix it. You'll be frustrated. Or say your house gets damaged and you need to fix this, or your car. If you need to spend money for these kinds of things, you'll be frustrated and agitated and annoyed during these kinds of situations. But you can train your mind to let that go, where you gradually pursue goals and objectives about your financial resources, but you don't form your inner feelings based on these things. So this is a teaching from the Buddha about ordained practitioners not accepting currency, which was gold and silver at the time. But nowadays we do accept this because it's important to be able to conduct your life with ease, and having a little bit of currency allows you to do that. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they were able to conduct their life without that because they were living right alongside their students, which nowadays we don't do that. So that's why we need to accept a certain amount of currency to be able to pay for electric and water and things like this at the temple and things of this nature. So any questions on this particular chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is just thank all of you guys for coming. Thank you for deciding today is a day that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. As you would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to, either here at the temple or online through our live streams and Zoom and all these other methods. On Sundays and Wednesdays, this is a great time for new students to learn. And if you get this first book, which is the first volume of the book series, either through the website or taking it and go printing it, getting a printed version here on Amazon, that's the best place to start. This is not the traditional method of learning. This is more of a study group where we kind of study as a group. But if you end up coming tomorrow, or you come on next week I'm teaching a course on harmony and relationships. This is going to start on Monday at 9 a.m. We're here at the temple, and I'll be live streaming it as well. I'm going to teach you about all the teachings that you need in order to develop harmony in your relationships, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have bitterness and hostility in your relationships. They're all at ease. And you'll see that I teach in a more traditional method where I'm teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes and then opening up to questions and things like this, where this is more of a study group that we come together once a week to be able to study the original words of the Buddha. So tomorrow's chapter is chapter 13 of volume 1. This is titled Identifying Your Cravings. This is analysis of the mind. I'm going to teach you how to look inward and be able to discover exactly what your cravings are, and then to be able to put together a plan to almost surgically remove this out of the mind. So I'm going to teach you how to do this tomorrow. It'll only take me a short bit of time to teach it to you, and then we're going to spend time talking about it and using examples from your life so that you can learn how to do this, where you can surgically go in and remove these cravings, desires, attachments from your mind. And then on Wednesday here, I'm going to be doing meditation and teaching true love, love without attachment, which is going to be part of the 5-day course. The whole heart of that course of harmony and relationships is to understand true love and what love is, because in the unenlightened state, we don't really understand love. Craving, desire, attachment masquerades as love. And this is why you have difficulties in your relationships, that if you're not practicing true love, then you're going to have struggles. You're going to have constantly broken relationships and arguments and hostility and bitterness in your relationships. But when you can get to true love in your relationships, you'll be able to have relationships that are wonderful, fulfilling, and satisfying. But until you understand what true love is, you won't actually be able to do that. So in the Harmony and Relationships course, you're going to be learning a whole bunch of things, but the real focal point in that course is understanding what true love is. And I'm going to start that Monday next week. coming up in 2 days. And then we'll go for 5 days from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And these resources and these classes and courses are all available at no cost, whether you're joining here at the temple or you're joining online. And these classes are also recorded. So if for some reason you can't attend the live classes, you can just watch it on our YouTube channel, on our podcast, or on Facebook as well. So perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.